How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another advanced exosuit guide for Exoprimal. We're getting very close to having covered all of them by now, but we still have a few left we have to talk about, such as the Goliath Krieger. For the very basics of how Krieger works, I recommend checking out the Ultimate Classes video that shows all the abilities for the exosuits, but here I'll only go through the more advanced parts of Krieger, their exclusive exosuit modules, and I'll also present the PvE and the PvP build that I prefer to use in my games. Before we start, an announcement that my community Discord server is open for everyone to join. We have established an Exoprimal section on it, so if you're looking for a chill and non-toxic environment to make friends for Exoprimal, the link is in the description of this video. Now let's dive in. Krieger is a ranged tank exosuit that specializes particularly in suppressing dinosaurs and enemy exosuits, and I would say it is in the middle between Roadblock and Murasame, as Krieger is capable of both considerable tanking and dishing out respectable damage at the same time, while the others are more of the extremes. One of the somewhat early impressions I read in a lot of places that players feel Krieger is underwhelming or that they are simply weak, and frankly that couldn't be further from the truth, as they are the best exosuit when it comes to countering dinosaur hordes, or perhaps even holding important positions and objectives on the map, not to mention having one of the best sustained damage among exosuits. First of all, let's talk about Krieger's minigun, the K40 Repulsor minigun, that is a special weapon in the game as it offers an effect similar to suppressing fire in wargames, which means if Krieger is shooting at small dinosaur hordes, all of them will stagger as long as they are being shot, which according to my tests is indicated by the large circle instead of your shooting reticle, and I say that because the circle isn't really indicating your minigun spread that well, but it seems to be accurate for the suppression effect. The suppressing fire is incredibly powerful, as even against the craziest and largest small dinosaur hordes, Krieger can technically hold out alone as long as they're shooting, which if you have played a high-level PvE defense mission, it comes really handy to not get overrun. Additionally, after numerous tests, I can say that the minigun is in fact one of the best damaging weapons in the game. Yes, it even rivals or straight up is better than some of the guns of assault exosuits, which allows Krieger to have a very good sustained damage, and it further strengthens their role as a reliable pillar of a team rather than an extreme extension you have to play around. Next to the minigun, Krieger's dome is also a very powerful defensive tool they have, which should be relatively straightforward. But one thing I would say is important to note here, that I think a lot of newer Krieger players fall into the trap and mistake that they use the dome out of panic without good positioning, especially against large dinosaurs, and their shield immediately gets broken because of it, since if a large dinosaur is in the dome while you place it down, it shatters. So it is very important to make sure you first position yourself properly and only then use the dome, otherwise you will be wasting your best supportive skill here. Remember this. Now when it comes to Krieger's modules, I actually really like them as they have a good variety based on how you want to play and customize them according to your playstyle. The first comparison between Rapid Shot and Scatter Shot is immediately a good example that separates two very distinct playstyles you can choose with Krieger, and both of them are very solid choices. Rapid Shot will modify your minigun so that you immediately start firing at the maximum rate. A really good quality of life or overall utility module, as now you can have more controlled fire or breaks whenever you want without any fear of getting caught off guard, especially in PvP. You can control your overall fire a lot better thanks to it, and gives you better mobility in case you have to change position or switch targets fast, since there is no wind-up rate for your minigun anymore. And I would say this module is especially useful for PvP, where you might have to move more frequently or counter melee exosuits who are pushing against your team, but also because going in close in PvP isn't really the best plan as Krieger. The other option is Scatter Shot, which modifies your minigun to have a lot worse bullet spread, thus significantly reducing your effective range at which you can reliably aim and hit targets. I would say this at least halves it in fact, but in exchange you will also get a lot better overall minigun performance, as your overall heat meter's capacity is 250% of the original's, allowing you to shoot a lot longer before you would have to cool your weapon. This is the option I personally prefer in PvE, as it gives you ridiculous staying power as Krieger and continue on with the relentless bullet storm, especially with a specific build giving you significant DPS boost. But it also requires a very dedicated short range and very aggressive playstyle, while Rapid Shot from earlier suits a more defensive and long range strategy as Krieger. Both options are valid, but you have to make sure you use the guns in their effective range, as using Scatter Shot from afar will more than halve your DPS with how the bullets will scatter all over your screen. Remember, the wide circle is not accurate, that only indicates your suppressing fire effect. And in case you were thinking about using Rapid Shot then instead along with the reload efficiency module to catch up in damage, I personally don't think it's worth it as it barely reduces your loading time and the DPS gain from it is negligible of only gaining like 6 or something more DPS, so you're better off with something else. Next we have Electro Missiles versus Sturdy Dome, and this category is a little bit tough to choose from since they are both really good, but also not so good options. Electro Missiles will first modify your stun lock missiles to have a better chance at paralyzing dinosaurs, which I tested and decreases the requirement from using this ability 5 times down to 3, which is still over 30 seconds cooldown time all in all, and I'm not sure if that's really going to help that much in defeating larger dinosaurs. And without Electro Missiles, you can still stun smaller ones like Pteranodons that it's useful for. The secondary effect on it, on the other hand, is extremely powerful as it applies an over 70% movement reduction debuff on caught enemy exosuits for 3 seconds. And if they are caught in the open while you have a melee on them or a sniper, those are very easy picks for your team, but this option is also very powerful for defense as melee exosuits rushing your team are one of the more dangerous situations you can find yourself in. But I would say this module is only really good for PvP from my tests. If it were to also reduce the missile cooldowns, that would be great for PvE too. Your other module is Sturdy Dome, which is a really weird module as I really think they wanted to decrease the cooldown time of the shield and not increase it. Like, this is just very niche pick in my opinion. So I tested and the increased shield amount against dinosaurs isn't really going to change much. In fact, against large dinosaurs, if you place your shield well, the dome is going to disappear sooner than they can destroy it, but now you have a 4 seconds bonus cooldown on it. And smaller dinosaurs usually don't break it at all either, so in PvE I don't think this is a great option for the current difficulty of the game at least. For PvP, it also states that it knocks back hostile exo fighters when you use it. This knockback is quite significant as you can see, and I think it's an extremely fun ability to use to knock down the enemy team into pits if you can, but since you cannot change your build during a game when you see the map, this is very situational advantage, so instead, what you'll encounter most of the time is that you push melee exo fighters out from your team, saving your squishy exo fighter mates, and then you have a little bit of bonus shield durability here too. But I'm not sure if you're under heavy fire that this 400 bonus durability is going to change anything, so the only scenario I can see this useful is if you are in an organized team or a competition and you do a timed push against the enemy team where every second matters and it can give you an advantage. Both options I think are for PvP mainly. I'm definitely very biased here since I'm mostly a PvE player. Electro Missiles I think are good, but because of the cooldown increase, I'm not a fan of Sturdy Dome and I would much prefer more frequent shields. Our last option is between Thrust Enhancer and Thrusted Dash Plus, modifying your dash ability, and these are both very good depending on how you want to specialize. Thrust Enhancer will reduce the dash cooldown by 5 seconds and gives you increased knockback from it where it's already really powerful. So this ability is immediately great for extra mobility because of the reduced cooldown. It gives you knockback for strategic maneuvering, like knocking the team into bad positions, and it's also fairly decent in PvE since your thruster dash has an insane range around you that picks up all small dinosaurs and pushes them in front of you, so it's also a very good horde controlling module. The other option is Thruster Dash Plus, which reduces your flinching while the ability is active so you don't get interrupted, and most importantly, it gives you a whopping 50% overall damage reduction for around 6 whole seconds, which is incredibly long for a tanking exosuit. This option I like to use it aggressively compared to Thrust Enhancer, and in fact I combine it with Scatter Shot from the beginning if you remember, as this damage reduction allows me to stay closer to large dinosaurs and make full use of the increased DPS of Scatter Shot while still staying relatively safe thanks to the shield. Of course, this can also be used offensively since 50% damage reduction is nothing to scoff at, so even if you just want to hold a position, which Krieger is excellent at, this can make you unkillable for a little while, especially combined with an aid rig or a healer supporting you. I'm certainly partial to Thruster Dash, but again, if you like to do a lot of maneuvers and dodging instead of tanking damage, Thrust Enhancer is also a very valid option here. So with all that said, let's take a look at some builds. For PvE, I like to rock the Scatter Shot module for larger magazine and increased DPS of your minigun, and since you have to be very close to your targets to actually make use of them, I combined it with Thruster Dash Plus for the on-demand damage reduction, and I also am not using any of the exclusive modules in the second slot, but instead I picked up Impact Reduction module, which greatly reduces the knockback effects I receive even from larger dinosaurs, and I just become this unmovable stone that constantly dishes out very respectable sustained damage while basically face tanking most dinosaurs that attack me. A really fun and satisfying build that I can't recommend enough to try out. For PvP, I definitely want to stay ranged though, as I think that's where Krieger excels at against other exosuits, so I take Rapid Shot for the better minigun control. I prefer Electro Missiles for the 70% movement speed reduction if I want to either attack or defend my team from a push. This can stop all melee exosuits in a second. And I still personally choose Thruster Dash Plus here, as currently I think most players just don't recognize when the other player has a defense buff on them, and I think a lot of times it's easy to bait attention on you while your team can pick them off one by one. And that's also a great module in case you're the last exosuit standing. And that is a wrap for a Krieger Tank Exosuit guide, everyone. Another fun episode, I have to say. Krieger would be frankly my favorite exosuit if they had more serious skins. I just really don't like the ones they have currently, but that's mostly subjective, so I'm hoping they'll get something really cool in the future. I have my fingers crossed for that. A small note that I am mainly a PvE oriented player in Exoprimal, so while I presented some objective numbers and values for the modules, you should make up your own mind though whether they are good or not and experiment with them in your own games to find their best uses. That's it for today, everyone. Thank you for watching another guide of mine, hope it was helpful. But remember, a Savage Gauntlet is coming later this week. I will be heavily following and covering the whole event, so keep an eye out for guides. I'll try to upload them as soon as possible. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you the next time.